My name is Jessica Morgan, and if you asked anyone in my family, I've always been the odd one out, the stubborn girl who grew up to wear a badge, not pearls. For 16 years, I've served as a sergeant in the Philadelphia Police Department, patrolling some of the toughest neighborhoods, making split-second decisions, learning to trust my gut more than I trust most people. But nothing in my years on the force prepared me for the lesson my own family taught me at my cousin's wedding, just outside Princeton, New Jersey, a lesson about loyalty, pride, and how easily love can turn into disappointment. That Saturday started like every other family gathering, a long drive, a practiced smile, and an extra dose of patience. I'd worked late the night before, running paperwork at the precinct and then stopping off at a late-night diner, where the only other customers were 2 rookie cops and a grandmother grading papers. At dawn, I changed out of my uniform, pulled on a simple blue dress, and drove 4 hours north on the turnpike with a coffee the size of my forearm. The wedding venue was a sprawling country club my parents had belonged to since before I was born. White columns, velvet lawns, gold-plated everything. My mother, Linda Morgan, had spent her entire adult life cultivating status there. I was barely out of my car when she texted, "Try to be on time. And Jessica, wear something appropriate." Appropriate. For her, that meant quiet jewelry, straight posture, and an expression that could freeze a rainstorm. I parked at the far end of the lot, just beneath the elms where, as a child, I used to sneak away during family parties with Emily, my cousin, and the bride. Emily and I had shared secrets under those trees, sworn would never let our families change us. Inside, the air was thick with perfume and money. The club's lobby gleamed with mahogany and crystal chandeliers. As I crossed the threshold, I could almost hear the imaginary security alarm, intruder alert, police officer, middle class, potentially disrupts the peace. My badge was in my purse, but I might as well have worn it on my forehead. "Well, if it isn't Officer Jess," my Aunt Barbara murmured to my mom, just loud enough for me to hear as I walked by. I didn't let it show. I've learned to keep my face neutral. Whether I'm walking into a crime scene or a country club, it's all about reading the room before you let them read you. Mom didn't look up from where she was fixing her pearl necklace, the one Dad bought her after his big promotion to Bank VP. Those pearls were her armor, the same as my badge was for me. She glanced at me, then at my shoes, as if she could spot the hours I'd spent pounding concrete in boots. "Jessica, honey," she said, her voice honey-sweet but cold, "we saved you a seat in the back. Near the windows." She said it like she was doing me a favor. "Didn't want you to feel out of place." Out of place. At my own cousin's wedding. I smiled and nodded, pretending it didn't sting. I'd had years to get used to that feeling. My assigned seat was at table 13, way in the back, next to the photographer's assistant and a guest nobody seemed to recognize. I watched Emily's friends hugging and laughing, the family flocking around my parents and the groom's wealthy relatives. Emily caught my eye across the room and gave me a soft, apologetic smile. We hadn't spoken in months, but for a second, we were kids again, just Jess and Em, hiding from grown-ups. I sat down, folded my hands, and looked out at the manicured golf course. I thought about all the hours Emily and I had spent out there with her dog, dodging golf carts, making up stories about running away to California, or maybe even joining the police together, dreams that always faded by morning. Now, Emily was marrying Martin, a junior partner at a New York law firm. She'd made it, at least by family standards. Meanwhile, I'd spent the past 5 years living in a one-bedroom apartment in South Philly, most of my time split between 12-hour shifts and community outreach programs. I had a good life, One built on service, on something real, but to my family, that life was invisible. As the ceremony began, I watched Emily walk down the aisle in a vintage lace gown that once belonged to our grandmother. She looked beautiful, nervous, but radiant. I felt a bittersweet pang, remembering late-night talks on the phone, Emily crying over some boy who broke her heart, me promising things would get better. We used to say we'd be each other's maids of honor. Life had rewritten that script. During the vows, my mind wandered. I thought about the city, about my squad, about the girl I'd met the week before at a coffee shop who wanted to join the police academy, about the families I'd helped after midnight shootings, the kids who recognized me on the street. None of that mattered here, though. Here, I was just Jessica, Linda Morgan's difficult daughter, the family's awkward story. When the minister pronounced Emily and Martin husband and wife, the whole room erupted in applause. I clapped and smiled, trying not to let my mind drift too far from the moment. There was a brief hug from Emily, a whispered thank you for coming. I said, I wouldn't have missed it for the world, and for a second, I believed it. But as the room began to shift to cocktail hour, and as the other guests drifted toward the champagne bar, I realized something. I was more of a guest in this family than I'd ever been on patrol in a stranger's home. I took a deep breath, straightened my shoulders, and prepared myself for whatever came next. I'd learned the hard way. Sometimes the most dangerous places aren't the streets. Sometimes, it's family. After the ceremony, the crowd moved toward the grand ballroom for cocktails. Crystal glasses clinked, the air buzzed with polite laughter, and a jazz trio played in the corner near the windows. Waiters in white gloves moved through the crowd with trays of shrimp and tiny crab cakes. I grabbed a club soda. Never drink at family events, not after last Thanksgiving's debacle. Standing near the edge of the room, I watched my family slip into their old patterns. My dad, Charles Morgan, was in his element. Dressed in his custom-tailored tux, he told booming stories about his bank days to a circle of old golf buddies. They laughed at all the right moments, and I could tell they'd loved every second of it. He'd always measured worth in titles, salaries, and who showed up in the business section of the newspaper. To him, the police badge I wore wasn't something to be proud of. It was a reminder I'd chosen a blue-collar over Wall Street. My mom floated from group to group, clutching her pearls, careful to mention their recent vacation in Nantucket and how Emily and Martin would be honeymooning in Hawaii, all a gift from them, of course. Mom had always been a master at sliding social details into conversations, making sure no one ever forgot their place in the family hierarchy. I leaned against the wall, invisible but not alone. My table mates included a college student named Jake, the photographer's assistant, working this gig to pay his way through NYU, and a guest named Tara, a friend of the groom's sister, who looked as lost as I felt. Tara smiled sympathetically, recognizing a fellow outsider. We exchanged a few quiet words about the weather and the band, both of us knowing we'd been placed here intentionally. I kept an eye on Emily. She was radiant, making the rounds, hugging guests, and basking in the glow of her new husband. She came over once, breathless and glowing. "Jess, you made it. I know you must be swamped at work." Her voice was soft, her eyes searching. "I'm just glad you're here," I said, and meant it. She apologized quickly for the seating. "Mum thought you'd want some space." "Don't worry about it," I replied. "It's your day." But inside, it stung more than I wanted to admit. Old memories returned. Sleepovers, inside jokes, and whispered plans to move to California together. We used to talk about running away from all this, finding some small town, reinventing ourselves far from our family's expectations. But now she belonged here, and I was the family's police problem, a proof you could be successful and still not quite good enough. Dinner was served with practiced efficiency: prime rib, salmon, and roasted vegetables, plated perfectly. I picked up my food, not hungry. Jake filled the silence with stories about his film project and how he'd never seen so much wealth in one place. "So, what do you do, Jess?" he asked. I hesitated, then told him, "I'm a police sergeant, Philly PD." He grinned, genuinely impressed. "Wow, that's badass." Before I could answer, Dad's voice cut through the noise from 3 tables away, loud enough for everyone to hear. "My daughter? Oh, Jessica? She's just playing cop. Always running into trouble, chasing after other people's messes. Maybe one day she'll get a real job." The table fell silent. Tara looked away, and Jake stared at his fork. I felt the old anger rise, the same feeling I'd get every time a suspect spit on my uniform or a city official sneered at a woman in blue. Except this was my father. "Charles, enough," and my mom snapped, not because she wanted to defend me, but because she cared about appearances. "What?" "I'm just telling the truth," a dad replied, voice already thick from too much wine. "She's 39, no husband, no kids, living alone in Philly. When is she going to get serious about her life?" I didn't answer. I didn't trust myself to speak. Instead, I glanced around the table. Jake was watching me carefully. Tara offered a supportive smile. Even the waitstaff paused, sensing tension. Uncle Henry, Dad's younger brother and a real estate agent in Florida, joined in. "Hey Jess, when are you going to quit playing with danger? That city's no place for a single woman." Then Aunt Barbara, "She's basically married to the job, aren't you, honey?" Laughter rolled around the table. It was the same old joke, only this time, it didn't feel like a joke at all. I forced a smile, but my hands were trembling under the tablecloth. I'd faced armed suspects and angry mobs, but nothing cut as deep as family shame. They didn't know about the lives I'd saved, the nights I'd come home with blood on my hands, the times I'd helped families get through the worst day of their lives. To them, I was just the stubborn daughter who hadn't made it out of uniform. I was the reminder of choices they'd never understand. Emily tried to change the subject, mentioning the cake, but Dad wouldn't let it go. "Let her hear it." "We've been too polite for too long," he slurred, eyes narrowing. "You're almost 40, Jessica. When will you realize you're not a kid anymore? You're just an overpaid security guard with a badge." The whole table went silent. I felt my heart beating in my chest, loud, steady, unbreakable. If only they knew. I sat there in stunned silence, the words overpaid security guard echoing in my mind, bouncing between anger and heartbreak. My father's smirk said he thought he'd made some profound point, like calling out my career choices was some kind of tough love. I'd seen that look before, both in the interrogation room and at family dinners, and it always meant the same thing. He had no idea who I really was. My mother looked away, pretending to adjust her bracelet, desperate for the attention to shift back to wedding toasts and not her problem child. I could tell from the tightness around her mouth that she was just waiting for the moment to parse. Jake, the photographer's assistant, looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. I almost envied him. I tried to remind myself who I was. I thought of the last few weeks, my squad cracking a major burglary ring, mentoring a rookie cop who reminded me of myself at 25, comforting the mother of a lost child after a midnight call. I wore those moments like invisible armor, stronger than anything my family could say. But still, the sting of rejection hurt. I forced myself to eat a few bites. If there's one thing police work teaches you, it's how to keep your game face on. Don't show weakness. Don't let them see you bleed. But I felt the old ache in my chest, the loneliness that crept in whenever my family made me the punchline. It wasn't just about work, it was about belonging. And at that table, with my relatives whispering and my father on his third glass of Cabernet, I'd never felt less like I belonged. Uncle Henry piled on. Jess, honestly, you could have been anything. Why stay a cop? Why not move to the suburbs, get married, have a couple of kids? Isn't that what you want? I could have laughed if it didn't hurt so much. He'd never understand, none of them would, how the job isn't just a job. It's a calling. It's the difference between sleeping easy and lying awake at 3 a.m., wondering if you did enough. It's the weight of the badge and the pride that comes from standing between chaos and order, even when no one notices. Aunt Barbara chimed in with a mocking smile. She's married to the force. I guess that's better than being alone. The table chuckled, but the laughter was hollow. I wanted to stand up and tell them everything, about the nights I'd driven home, too tired to take off my boots, about the friends I'd lost, about the families I'd helped, about the real cost and the real rewards of a life in blue. But what was the point? They'd already decided who I was. Emily caught my eye from across the room, her expression apologetic. She knew. Or at least, she tried to. We'd once been as close as sisters, but years of distance and different choices had made our worlds hard to bridge. Suddenly, my phone buzzed in my lap. I glanced down. Sergeant Morgan, urgent. Your presence requested at 1900. Special ceremony. Chief attending. Congratulations. Captain Turner. I blinked, rereading the message twice. Special ceremony? My heart skipped. Was this what I thought it was? A promotion? Recognition, finally, for all the nights and weekends, for the years of sacrifice? I looked up. Dad was deep into another story, this time about his time as a bank manager, painting himself as the hero who saved the day with a well-timed loan. He never tired of those stories. I wondered if he'd ever really listened to any of mine. I excused myself quietly and headed for the ladies' room. The marble floors echoed beneath my steps as I made my way down the hall, away from the noise and the judgment. I locked myself in a stall and pulled out my phone again. The message was real. The promotion was real. I was about to become a lieutenant, a step I'd dreamed of for years. I felt tears prick my eyes, and for once, I let them fall. Not from sadness, but from the overwhelming sense of accomplishment, of finally being seen by the people who mattered, my peers, my department, my city. I cleaned myself up, fixed my makeup, and stared at my reflection. I didn't see the failure my father thought I was. I saw a woman who'd faced down danger, who'd never backed down from a challenge, who'd earned every stripe on her uniform. I saw someone I could be proud of, even if my family never would be. When I returned, the room had shifted from dinner to dancing. The band was playing an old Sinatra tune, couples spinning across the floor in a swirl of laughter and light. I slipped back into my seat. Dad was regaling a new group with tales of my adventures, most of them exaggerated, all of them dismissive. And she barely calls us anymore. Too busy chasing criminals in Philly. You know, she probably makes less than my secretary." He laughed, the joke falling flat. I slid into my seat with a new kind of calm. I was done apologizing. I'd spent most of my life chasing approval from people who'd never bother to understand me. Maybe tonight, finally, I could let that go. Dad turned, noticing me. There she is. Our resident hero. "Tell us, Jessica, how's life chasing car thieves? Still living in that showbox apartment?" He laughed again, and some of his friends joined in. I met his gaze, steady and unblinking. "Actually, Dad, it's a pretty good life. And yes, sometimes it means missing out on family events, but it also means making a difference." My voice was quiet, but it carried. He waved me off. "Hero? Her? You keep telling yourself that." Just then, I heard it, a low rumble, distant at first, then growing louder. The windows rattled as a helicopter appeared, sweeping across the evening sky, floodlights illuminating the golf course. The guests murmured, gathering at the windows. Even my father looked annoyed, his performance interrupted by the unmistakable whir of rotors. Someone near the doors called out, "Is that a police chopper?" I smiled to myself, heart pounding. This time, the interruption wasn't about chaos or shame. This time, it was about me. The chopper's presence was unmistakable, a Philadelphia Police Department helicopter. Right there in the sky over the New Jersey Country Club. Its searchlight played over the manicured lawns and the white tents, lighting up the wedding as if it were the scene of a Hollywood film. Inside the ballroom, everyone went silent. Heads swiveled, phones came out. The jazz band trailed off in mid-chorus. Someone's drink clinked onto the marble bar. I watched my family's confusion grow, saw my father's face wrinkle in irritation, then worry. For a fleeting moment, I saw myself through their eyes, always their cop, always the unpredictable element, and now the source of some high-profile drama at the biggest social event of the season. I stood, straightening my shoulders, smoothing the skirt of my dress. Jake, the photographer's assistant, looked at me in awe. "That's your crew?" he whispered. "Something like that," I replied, heart racing. I walked to the edge of the dance floor, and the guests instinctively parted as if I carried a contagious secret. The club's double doors burst open. 2 uniformed officers entered first, then a tall, imposing man in a police chief's dress uniform, Chief Samantha Reed, my direct supervisor, the highest-ranking woman in the department's history. Her shoes tapped sharply on the marble, her posture perfect, her eyes scanning the room. Following close behind was the city's deputy mayor and 2 officers with ceremonial boxes in their hands. A hush fell. For a moment, the only sound was the faint thump of helicopter blades outside. Chief Reed spotted me instantly. Her face, so often all business at work, split into a rare and genuine smile. "There she is," as she announced, her voice carrying over the silent ballroom. "Sergeant Jessica Morgan, please step forward." The crowd parted for me. I could feel my father's eyes boring into my back, 100 unspoken questions swirling behind his frown. My mother clutched her pearls so tightly I thought the string would snap. I kept my gaze forward, walking tall, shoulders back, head high, the way I'd learned on the streets and in the academy. Chief Reed took my hand, and I saw a flicker of pride in her eyes, the pride I'd wished to see in my family for so many years. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, addressing the room, "I apologize for the interruption. but the city of Philadelphia insisted that this ceremony happen tonight. It cannot wait. Sergeant Morgan, on behalf of the city, the department, and every officer who has ever worn this badge, it is my great honor to present you with the Medal of Valor and to announce your promotion to lieutenant, effective immediately. Gasps rippled through the crowd. For a long, electric moment, I felt the room turn toward me, not with suspicion or disapproval, but with something like wonder. The deputy mayor opened a polished case and handed Chief Reed a silver badge. She pinned it to my dress, her hands steady. For your extraordinary courage and leadership during the Market Street hostage crisis, you have brought honor not just to this department, but to this city. Her words rang in my ears. I remembered that day, how scared I'd been, how calm I'd forced myself to be for my squad, the faces of the hostages I'd helped walk out alive. No one in my family had known the details. Until now, they'd never asked. The applause that followed was thunderous. My colleagues, who'd quietly slipped in during the commotion, clapped and cheered, the sound echoing off the chandeliers. For the first time that night, I felt truly seen. Not as someone's disappointment, not as a failed daughter, but as the person I'd fought to become. I looked toward my father. His face was pale, jaw tight. My mother's eyes were wide, shining with tears, real ones, this time, not for show. Emily, my cousin, was the first to reach me. She hugged me, hard, whispering, I had no idea, Jess. I'm so proud of you. Martin, her new husband, clapped me on the back, grinning. Even Aunt Barbara, who'd always doubted me, nodded with genuine respect. The chief and the deputy mayor shook my hand, exchanged a few private words of congratulations, and then left as swiftly as they had arrived. The helicopter lifted off with a roar, carrying my badge number into the sky. For a long moment, the ballroom was silent, guests processing what they'd just seen. I turned back to my family. Dad finally found his voice. Jessica, why didn't you tell us? His tone was raw, confused, almost pleading. I met his gaze, years of longing and pain and quiet pride mixing inside me. Would it have mattered if I did? I asked gently. You never really listened. I wanted you to be proud of me for who I am, not just for what I could put on a resume. He looked away. I didn't know, he muttered, almost to himself. Emily's mother dabbed her eyes. We were so wrong, Jess. I'm sorry. The rest of the night was a blur, people shaking my hand, relatives I barely knew offering congratulations, even the country club staff stopping me to thank me for my service. I heard, for the first time, stories about friends and neighbors I'd helped without knowing, cases that had rippled out into the community. I felt the support of my real family, the one I'd built on the streets of Philadelphia, standing just outside the spotlight, beaming with pride. Eventually, the party wound down. I made my way outside, standing beneath the clear night sky, listening to the quiet hum of the city in the distance. My phone vibrated, messages from my squad, old partners, and even people I hadn't spoken to in years. The police family is a strange thing, forged in fire, tested by tragedy, bound by a loyalty my relatives had never shown me. As I looked up at the stars, I felt lighter than I had in years. The night air was cool and bracing as I stood outside the country club, trying to let it all sink in. My mind buzzed with the events of the last hour. In the distance, I could still see the afterglow of the police helicopter's lights fading across the sky. For a long moment, I just breathed, slow and deep, the way I'd been taught for moments of adrenaline or grief. Behind me, the doors opened. I turned to see Emily rushing out, heels in her hand, her wedding dress trailing on the patio stones. She didn't say anything at first. She just hugged me, so tightly it almost hurt. "Jess," she whispered, her voice trembling, "I'm so sorry I let them treat you like you didn't matter. I should have done more. I should have stood up for you years ago." I squeezed her back, blinking away tears. "You don't have to apologize, Em. It wasn't your job to fight my battles." I smiled, a little sad but a little lighter too. "You're the only reason I kept showing up for these things." Emily pulled away and studied my face. "I wish I had known how much you were doing. What you'd been through. I just wanted you here because you're my family." Her sincerity caught me off guard. For the first time in years, I felt seen, not as a disappointment, but as someone worth loving. Behind her, the door opened again. This time, my parents appeared. My mother, looking older than I'd ever noticed before, walked over with uncertainty in her eyes. My father stayed back, arms folded, mouth tight, as if he was still trying to piece together everything that had just happened. My mom reached out, her hand trembling. "Jessica, her voice cracked. "I didn't know. I thought you were happy with your little job, and I guess I didn't want to believe you'd chosen that life over what we wanted for you. But you did something tonight, something incredible. You made all of us proud." Her words hit me harder than I expected. I'd gone most of my life wanting that simple phrase from her. For years, I chased after her approval, measuring my worth by every subtle smile or withering sigh. Now, as she finally reached for my hand, I realized I didn't need it anymore, but it still meant everything to hear. My father took a tentative step forward, his jaw set but his eyes glistening. For a moment, he looked as lost as I'd ever seen him. "Jess," he began, struggling to keep his composure. "I was wrong. About all of it. About you. I thought I was protecting you from disappointment. From failure." He shook his head. "But I was just protecting myself from the truth that my daughter grew up to be stronger than I ever was." I wanted to respond, but no words came. There was only silence, filled with the weight of old wounds and the hope of something new. In that silence, something shifted between us, a kind of understanding, or at least the beginning of one. We walked back inside together. The reception was nearly over. Waiters cleared tables, and a few guests remained, swapping stories near the bar. As we entered, conversations hushed, then restarted with nervous energy. People glanced at me differently now, no longer as the odd Morgan daughter, but as someone who had stood at the center of the room and claimed her worth. Jake, the photographer's assistant, approached me before I could leave. "Lieutenant Morgan," he said shyly, "I just wanted to say thank you for what you do and for not hiding who you are." He fidgeted with his camera strap, then added, "And my brother's a rookie cop in Boston. He thinks the world of you, showed me a news story about you last year. I never thought I'd meet you in person." His eyes shone with admiration. I grinned. "Tell your brother to keep his head down and trust his instincts. And tell him there are good days ahead, even when it feels like the world is against you." He nodded, as if I'd just handed him a gift. "I will, I slipped out before anyone else could stop me, feeling lighter than I had in years. The parking lot was nearly empty, the last of the valet drivers smoking quietly beneath a lamp. As I opened my car door, my phone buzzed again, a message from Captain Turner, a well-deserved lieutenant. The department's proud tonight. The city's proud. See you Monday. I started the car but didn't drive away immediately. Instead, I let the engine idle and sat in the darkness, the silence wrapping around me. I thought about the journey, about growing up as the difficult daughter, about nights patrolling the city, about the faces of the people I'd helped and the ones I couldn't save. Family isn't always the one you're born into. Sometimes, you have to build it on your own, out of loyalty, respect, and the shared knowledge of what it means to show up when it matters. Tonight, maybe for the first time, I knew I had both, the family I came from and the family I'd made. As I finally pulled out of the parking lot and turned toward the city lights, I smiled, a real, quiet smile, the kind that comes when you know, finally, you're exactly where you're meant to be. The next morning, sunlight broke through my apartment window in South Philly, painting the familiar walls in gold. I'd barely slept. My mind kept replaying the night before, the confrontation with my father, the shock on my family's faces, the blinding moment under the ballroom lights when Chief Reed had pinned the new badge on my chest. My phone vibrated on the nightstand. For a second, I thought it was another work alert. Instead, I saw a string of messages, some from squad mates, others from friends in the neighborhood, and, most surprising of all, one from my father. Jessica, call me when you have time. Dad. I stared at the screen for a long time. Growing up, Dad rarely called first. I'd always been the one to reach out, holidays, birthdays, even after hard shifts, just to let him know I was safe. This time, I let the silence sit for a bit. There was power in not rushing. I brewed coffee and sat by my tiny kitchen table, the morning news humming on the old radio. The headlines made no mention of the wedding, but the department's social media was already lighting up with congratulations about my promotion and the Medal of Valor. My fellow officers sent emojis and inside jokes, but beneath it all, I could feel their pride. There's a camaraderie in police work that's hard to describe, a bond forged by danger, dark humor, and a mutual understanding that sometimes only your squad will ever get you. Midway through my second cup of coffee, my phone rang again, this time, Captain Turner. Lieutenant Morgan, he greeted, a smile in his voice. How's it feel? I couldn't help but laugh. Strange. Good. Like it's about time? Damn right, he replied. The whole station's buzzing. Even Chief Reed said you made her cry, and you know she doesn't cry for just anything. His words warmed me more than the coffee. Thanks, Captain. Take a few days. Relax, celebrate, see your people. You've earned it. We hung up. And I found myself grinning, feet up on the windowsill, watching the city wake up below me. Sirens wailed in the distance, a familiar lullaby. I realized, for the first time, I didn't feel the old ache in my chest. The shame was gone. I belonged, on these streets, in that squad, in this life I'd fought for. A little after noon, I finally called my father. He answered on the first ring, his voice thick, like he'd been rehearsing. Jessica? Hi, Dad. A pause. Then, I owe you an apology. The words came out awkward, but honest. I was wrong about you, about your career. I thought I was helping, pushing you towards something better. I didn't see what was right in front of me, How strong you are, how much good you do. I waited. Years of unspoken tension hung between us. I was jealous, maybe, he admitted, surprising us both. I built my world out of numbers, titles, promotions. You built yours out of courage. It takes more guts than I ever had. Something loosened in me, a knot that had been there since I was a girl. Thanks, Dad. That means a lot. He cleared his throat. Your mother wants you to come for dinner this week. Just us, no drama. I promise. I agreed. We hung up, and for a while, I just sat in the quiet, letting the words settle. Maybe we'd never be perfect, but we were trying. That mattered. Later that afternoon, I walked to the corner coffee shop, one of those hole-in-the-wall places where the barista knows your name and order before you say a word. As I sipped my latte and scrolled through congratulatory texts, a young woman in a hoodie approached my table. She was nervous, clutching a pamphlet from the local community college. Excuse me, are you Lieutenant Morgan? I looked up, surprised. I am. My cousin told me about you. He said you're the reason he stayed out of trouble last year. He said you gave him a chance, believed in him when nobody else would. She bit her lip, holding out the pamphlet. I want to join the police academy, but I'm scared. Everyone says it's not for girls like me. I smiled, motioning for her to sit. You're already braver than most. The academy is tough, but so are you. You show up, you work hard, you keep your head up, you'll make it. And you'll make this city better. Her eyes lit up. She asked questions about the job, the training, what it was like to be a woman in blue. For the next hour, I found myself mentoring her, parsing on the encouragement and the wisdom I'd had to fight to learn. By the time she left, I felt a spark I hadn't felt in a long time, the sense that my journey, with all its bruises and setbacks, meant something to others. That evening, I visited the precinct. The station was alive with the usual noise, officers swapping stories, phones ringing, radios crackling. But when I walked in, the chatter stopped. Applause broke out. My squad had decorated my locker with blue and silver balloons, and someone had left a homemade cake on my desk, shaped like a police badge. You earned it, Lieutenant, one of my officers shouted, and the room erupted in cheers. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was standing on the outside. I felt like I'd come home. In the following days, a gentle sense of change seeped into every corner of my life. The old heaviness with my family was slowly being replaced by something more honest, a cautious truce, maybe, but with flashes of warmth I hadn't known in years. 2 days after the wedding, I arrived at my parents' house for dinner. The old colonial in Cherry Hill looked the same as always, perfect shrubs, flagstone path, the brass eagle above the door. Inside, the table was already set for 3. No fancy guests, no relatives whispering. Just me, my mother, and my father, each of us feeling a little awkward, like guests in our own home. Mom greeted me with a long hug, her eyes shiny but smiling. She pressed a photo into my hand, a snapshot of me in my new uniform, clipped from the local paper's website. I printed it, as she said, almost shy. It's on the fridge. Right next to Emily's wedding photo. We sat together over roast chicken and mashed potatoes. Simple, real, comfort food. For a while, we talked about safe things. The weather, old neighbors, how the fillies were losing again. I could see my father fidget, wanting to say more but unsure how to begin. Finally, he cleared his throat. "I told my friends at the club about your medal," he said, eyes on his plate. They were impressed. So was I. Still am. He looked up, and I saw the old pride in his eyes, but without the competition this time. "I never understood what you did, Jess. I never tried to understand. I wanted you safe, but I also wanted you to be just like me. That was selfish." I took a deep breath. "Dad, you don't have to say all the right things. I just want you to see me for who I am." He nodded. "I do now. I hope you'll forgive an old fool for being so slow to learn." My mother reached across the table, squeezing my hand. "We love you, Jess. We always have. We just needed reminding of how strong you are." It was enough, more than enough. We finished dinner in an easy quiet, and as I left, my dad hugged me tightly. "Don't be a stranger," he said, voice thick with emotion. "Next time, bring your badge." Back at the station, my days took on a new rhythm. I dove into my new role as lieutenant, leading my team through a string of long shifts and difficult calls. The city was always alive, always demanding. Domestic disputes, a string of car break-ins, and even a heart-stopping moment with a missing child reunited safely with her family. One afternoon, I stood by the window in my new office, a cramped room with chipped paint, but it was mine. My squad dropped by with questions and updates, but they also stopped in just to talk. Officer O'Connor, a rookie barely out of the academy, asked if she could shadow me on patrol. "You're the reason I stayed in this job," as she admitted. "I thought about quitting last year. Then I heard your story about the Market Street crisis and what it cost you. I realized what kind of cop I want to be." I smiled, handing her a fresh cup of coffee. "We all have doubts, O'Connor. What matters is what we do when no one's looking. Keep showing up. That's what counts." The rest of the squad took their lead from her. Our little precinct began to feel more like family than ever before. Officers stopped by after shifts just to chat, bringing me coffee or snacks, sharing their wins and losses, big and small. There were hard nights too, a domestic violence call that went sideways, a car accident with injuries, but for the first time, I felt the full strength of the team around me. I was leading, and I wasn't alone. Word of my promotion and the wedding helicopter scene seemed to ripple out through the neighborhood, too. At the bodega around the corner, the owner, Mr. Patel, grinned when I came in for milk. "Lieutenant Morgan. You're famous now, here? My wife saw you on the news. She says, tell her thank you for keeping our street safe." At the community center, the director invited me to speak at Career Day for local girls. When I took the podium in my new dress uniform, I looked out at a sea of young faces, some shy, some skeptical, all searching for a sign that someone like them could make it, too. I told them my story. I told them how every path is different, and how you don't have to fit someone else's expectations to make a difference. The applause was soft but sincere. Afterward, 3 girls waited to talk to me about the academy. I gave them my card and my time. Back home, things kept shifting. Emily texted me photos from her honeymoon, selfies on a Maui beach, her smile bright and easy. She called late one night, voice full of laughter and relief. I told Martin all about what happened at the wedding, as she said. "He thinks you're a superhero." I think so too. Sometimes, at the end of long days, I'd get calls from my mom just to check in. How was work? She'd ask. Did you eat? Small, ordinary things, but they made a world of difference. Even my dad started sending me emails, old articles about women in law enforcement, links to books about leadership, even a YouTube video about a famous cops in history. It was awkward but sweet, a father's way of saying, I'm proud of you, even if I'm still learning how to show it. One evening, I sat on my apartment fire escape, looking out at the city lights. My badge, new and gleaming, rested beside me, a symbol not just of the department's faith in me, but of my own. The journey had been hard, full of doubts and setbacks, but I'd earned every step. I thought of the people who'd helped me along the way, my squad, my captain, Chief Reed, the community kids, and yes, even my family. I realized then that healing is slow work. It happens in small moments, awkward dinners, honest words, and the silent understanding that no matter what, we keep trying. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new crises, new chances to lead. But tonight, in the hush of the city, I finally felt whole. A few weeks later, the city had started to feel different, not just to me, but to the people around me. At roll call, I noticed officers paid closer attention when I spoke. When I walked through the precinct, even the veterans nodded in respect. My badge didn't just symbolize a promotion, it was proof to every woman, every outsider, every late bloomer in the building that perseverance could win out over pedigree and politics. One evening, after a long shift, I got a call from Captain Turner. Jess, you free tomorrow night? Chief Reed wants you as our department rep at the Mayor's annual Heroes Dinner. Black tie, City Hall, the works. My first instinct was to decline. Fancy dinners had always made me uncomfortable, and I didn't relish the idea of more public speeches. But I thought about the young officers watching me now, about the girls from the community centre. I'll be there, I said, surprising us both. The next night, I stood at the mirror, smoothing a navy gown Emily had sent from Maui, a congratulations, a gift she insisted would look perfect under City Hall's bright lights. For the first time, I felt the dress wasn't a disguise. It was just another part of who I was, a cop, a daughter, a leader, and, finally, someone proud of her own story. At City Hall, the grand marble staircase was lined with uniformed officers and firefighters, the air thick with nerves and pride. Chief Reed greeted me at the top, her handshake firm, her expression approving. You earned this, Lieutenant. Own the moment. The mayor's speech was formal and a little stiff, but when he called my name, the applause was real, loud, sincere, and a little overwhelming. I took the stage, medal shining under the lights, and spoke from the heart, about service, about what the city had given me, about the importance of seeing the worth in those who don't fit the mold. Afterwards, dozens of people lined up to shake my hand. Fellow officers, teachers, parents, even kids. The deputy mayor introduced me to his teenage daughter, who wanted to be a detective. You're why she believes she can, he told me quietly. I thought of the years I'd spent fighting to prove myself and realized the fight had never really been about a single promotion or medal. It was about making space for others to follow. Back in my own neighborhood, change was happening in small, powerful ways. The girl I'd mentored at the coffee shop started at the police academy. She texted me after her first week, "The hardest thing I've ever done. But I know I can make it. Thank you, Lieutenant Morgan." The bodega owner's wife left a bag of homemade pastries at the precinct of for Philly's bravest. Mr. Patel smiled as he handed them over. My son wants to be like you one day. You make us proud, Jessica. Emily and I grew closer than we'd been in a decade. We called and texted almost daily. She sent goofy photos from her honeymoon, and I sent her snaps from late-night patrols or the squad's cookouts. One night, she called just to say, "You always were the best of us, Jess." I see it now. I hope our family does too. The biggest surprise came from my parents. My father, who once boasted only of his business and social connections, began telling friends about his daughter, the lieutenant. Mom invited her friends from the club over, beaming as she introduced me. This is my daughter, Jessica, the bravest woman I know. At first, the praise felt strange, too late, almost. But little by little, it started to feel real. We'd never erase the years of misunderstanding. But we were building something new, brick by careful brick. With work, family, and community finally in sync, I started thinking about what came next, not just for my squad or my parents, but for myself. For years, I'd thrown everything into the job, often at the expense of my own happiness. Now, for the first time, I felt ready to let other parts of life grow, too. I started running again in the mornings, not to chase away stress but for the pure rhythm of it. I let myself linger at the coffee shop, reading the news, sometimes chatting with neighbors or kids heading to school. I started volunteering at the community center, not as a Lieutenant Morgan, but as Jess, a mentor, a big sister, a steady presence. At the precinct, I organized a Women in Blue mentorship circle, officers of all ages gathering to share stories, advice, and laughter. The turnout was bigger than I'd hoped, and by the end of the first meeting, 3 more women signed up for the next police academy class. The sisterhood I'd longed for as a rookie was finally here, and I was honored to be a part of it. One afternoon, a senior officer, tough as nails, with 40 years on the job, pulled me aside. "Lieutenant, just wanted to say, you made it easier for all of us to show up as ourselves. That matters more than you know." Her words stayed with me long after the day ended. Back home, I sometimes caught myself smiling for no reason. My apartment, once a lonely outpost, now felt like home. Photos of my squad, of Emily, even of my parents lined the shelves. I hung my Medal of Valor above my desk, not for the glory, but as a reminder. Every step, every hardship, every stubborn refusal to give up had brought me here. Looking out my window at the city, I realized, maybe I hadn't just survived my family's doubts and the city's dangers, I'd grown strong because of them. Now, finally, I was ready for whatever came next. Autumn in Philadelphia carries a special kind of light, golden and sharp, washing the city's bricks and rooftops in a quiet, hopeful glow. I noticed it everywhere that season, in the changing leaves on my walk to the precinct, in the laughter echoing through the neighborhood park, in the warm invitations that had started to appear more often on my phone, from family, from friends, even from people I'd once only known in passing. It was nearly Thanksgiving when Emily called to ask if I'd come early and help her with the stuffing. Her house, once just a backdrop for family gatherings, had become a kind of second home, a place where the past could be talked about honestly and the future felt wide open. I arrived with a pie from my favorite bakery and the kind of easy confidence I'd only recently started to feel around family. Inside, her kitchen buzzed with the scent of cinnamon and sage. Emily had set a place for me at the counter, with coffee already brewed and the playlist set to our childhood favorites. As we chopped onions and measured spices, she glanced over, smiling. "Mom and Dad are coming early too," she said. Dad wants to carve the turkey this year. He says it's tradition. I rolled my eyes playfully. Since when does Dad care about tradition? We laughed together, the sound genuine, unburdened by old wounds. Soon my parents arrived, arms full of food and stories. My mother hugged me tightly, whispering, "It's so good to have you home." My father, never one for big speeches, pressed a small, wrapped box into my hand. Inside, I found a simple, gold-plated key. "It's for the house," he said. "Come by any time. No invitation needed. You're always welcome, Jess. Always." The words were simple, but they landed like a blessing. For years, I'd tried to earn my place in this family. Now I realized it had been mine all along. We ate together, sharing food and memories, each person taking a turn to offer thanks. When it was my turn, I spoke quietly but with certainty. I'm grateful for second chances. For the chance to do this job I love, and to come home to people who finally see me for who I am. There were tears, but they were happy ones. After dinner, we sat around the fireplace as the sky darkened. My mother asked about my work, really asked, with interest and curiosity. My father, for the first time, wanted to know what it felt like to lead a team, to be responsible for people in danger. I answered honestly, sharing the good and the hard, the pride and the heartbreak. Emily shared her own news. She and Martin were expecting their first child. The family who'd once been so divided now felt closer than ever, woven together by vulnerability and truth. In the days that followed, life settled into a new, steadier rhythm. The holidays came and went with less drama, more laughter. My squad at the precinct continued to grow and thrive, with new officers, women and men, joining our mentorship group, eager to learn, ready to serve. The department itself began shifting, too, more women promoted, more voices heard, a sense that change was possible if you just kept showing up and fighting for it. At the community centre, the girls I'd encouraged sent me updates about their training. One wrote, "I passed the test, Lieutenant Morgan. I did it because you said I could." I printed her message and hung it beside my badge, a reminder that leadership isn't just about rank, but about the lives you touch along the way. One chilly January morning, my father invited me for coffee at the little cafe near his office. It was quiet, the kind of place with foggy windows and the smell of fresh pastry. We talked about everything and nothing: sports, city news, the future. Then, as I finished my coffee, he looked at me seriously. "Jess," he said, "I want you to know I'm proud of you, not just for what you do, but for who you are. For staying true to yourself, even when it was hard." It took a moment for me to find my voice. "Thank you, Dad. I think I'm finally proud of me, too." He smiled, a little sad but mostly grateful. That's all a parent ever wants. As winter turned to spring, I continued to lead my squad, to serve my city, to show up for my family and for the people who'd come to depend on me. Life was never perfect. There were still tough calls, still moments of doubt, but I had learned to measure my worth by the difference I made, not by anyone else's expectations. On the anniversary of my promotion, Chief Reed stopped by my office. "You've come a long way, Lieutenant," she said. "Ready for the next step?" I nodded, not entirely sure what the future would bring, but certain of one thing: whatever came next, I'd face it with the same determination, resilience, and heart that had brought me here. On the way home that night, I took a different route, past the old country club where everything had changed. I slowed for a moment, looking out at the now quiet lawns, the place where my family's illusions had fallen away, and my own story had finally come into focus. As the sun set behind the city skyline, I rolled down my window, letting the cold air fill my lungs. I realized then that every journey is full of hard roads and unexpected turns. But if you stay true to yourself, if you keep showing up, even when it's tough, you just might find your way home.